You're a keen motorist, to say the least. Why do you think it is that motorway service stations are charging £1.60 up to £1.65 even more, when the average price for the litre of unleaded is more like £1.47?
Do you know what? It's one of the basic tenets of capitalism, Liam, supply and demand. And if you're foolish enough to not, as you quite correctly said in your monologue, not to fill up locally before you set off on the motorway, if you're foolish to have to rely on paying 20 pence a litre more than you would do at a car supermarket, at a supermarket petrol station, I have very little sympathy. Like you, Liam, I try and save my customers as much money as possible. I try and look after their interests as much as your show does. And my advice would be not to be so foolish, to be almost trapped into paying ridiculously inflated prices. It's not just the fuel that's 20 pence a litre overpriced, Liam. It's everything. If you want a sandwich, if you want a cup of coffee, if you have to have anything at a petrol station on the motorway, you are going to have your pants pulled down and your backside slapped by these people. And there's a bit of me that says, well, if you're foolish enough not to fill up, or if you're foolish enough not to get your snacks before you go on a long journey, then so be it. You deserve what you get. But I think there's very little we could do about it. It's supply and demand, and it's a captive audience.
Danny, one reason we wanted you on the show today was also because of those new car registration figures out. There's been a bit of an uptick in the UK in January compared to January 2021. Obviously, car manufacturing in the UK slumped, new registrations slumped in 2020 and into 2021 because of the pandemic. Are you noticing this uptick in your car dealing business?
Yeah, I specialise in used cars, Liam, but I'm reliant on buying the part exchanges from new car dealerships like Audi, BMW, etc. So the fewer cars that are going through the system because of this microchip shortage, we are seeing more and more cars coming through now. The average waiting list is really weird. Just for a bit of historical context on this, in 2020, at the start of the pandemic, when the whole world went into lockdown, car manufacturers themselves closed their factories and they stopped buying these microchips, and everything needs a microchip. A humble Ford Focus, modern technology in new cars is amazing. It has around about 1,700 of these semiconductors or microchips. So what happened was, when people stopped ordering new Fords and new BMWs because they were staying indoors and the dealerships were closed by COVID legislation, what happened was that these microchips were then diverted to technological areas elsewhere, like smartphones, like televisions, things that people are still going to need and they can order online. So the car manufacturers are playing catch up, really, Liam, and they're taking orders, and people are having to wait 6 to 12 months for their new cars. What that means to the used car market, Liam, is that it's reached a peak. I've noticed that car customers are now voting with their feet, and news has got out that the humble Ford Focus, let's just stick with the Ford Focus, the humble Ford Focus is more expensive than it was a used car, say, 2 years ago. And people are just thinking to themselves, what on earth am I doing spending £1,500, £2,000 more than I could have picked up the very same car 18 months, 2 years ago? So people know. I've noticed now that now word's got out, people are voting with their feet, and they're either keeping the old cars and they're maybe getting them maintained and re-MOT'd because they're not prepared to pay overinflated prices, because at some point, I think in May or June, I think there's going to be the bottleneck will be relieved, and there'll be a lot more new cars on the market, a lot more used cars going through the system. And of course, go back to my earlier capitalism tenet, supply and demand, there'll be more cars than is needed, and that will bring down the prices. So I'm noticing that prices are cooling. Prices are definitely cooling on the more expensive cars, £15,000 to £35,000, £40,000. People really are now